Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. My name is Lisa Lowe, and I'll be moderating today's session. Today, Jerwin Begonia, Senior Solutions Advisor with Project Line Solutions, is going to take us through the top 3 things to know about unit of measure groups. You can type your questions into the questions panel on the right side of your screen at any point throughout the session, and we'll leave some time at the end for Jerwin to answer questions. Jerwin, I'll pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Lisa. And again, welcome everybody to this session of Webinar Wednesday. As Lisa mentioned, we're going to be talking about the advanced unit of measure groups. So the agenda today really is to kind of define what unit of measure groups are. A lot of people have been asking about this, so we thought this would be a great topic for this month. I'll also go through the prerequisites and the setup. It's going to be very quick. It's very easy to set up. Then we'll walk you through some very practical examples of how to use units of measure groups. And then we'll just quickly wrap things up with a summary and some Q&A at the end of the day. So what exactly are unit of measure groups? Well, it's really a tool that was released in version 9.0 that allows us to purchase, sell, and inventory using different units of measures. Now, prior to 9.0, some of you might remember that there was sort of like a little bit of a workaround solution on how to do this. For example, you had to create a different item code for a different unit of measure. When it comes to beer, for example, I might have to, purchase, sell, and inventory in different units of measure groups. For example, by the each, by the separate can, for example, 6-pack, 12-pack, a 24-pack. And I'd have to create a separate item code for each. Whereas now with unit of measure groups, I can create a group called packs, for example. And I can assign different types of packs, like a 6-pack, 12-pack, or 24-pack, to a single item code. What that means for you is that you have less item codes to manage and your database is much smaller. So if you think about it, if you're a company that has maybe 1,000 item codes and you have maybe 20 different unit of measure groups, now you've just multiplied your item code installed by 20,000 item codes, right? So we can significantly reduce the number of item codes. Okay, so it also allows us to automatically calculate unit of measure conversions. So going back to my previous example of a 12-pack, well, I can define a group called 12-pack, and I can tell the system a 12-pack is equal to 12 eaches. Similarly, we can do that with the imperial and metric system. A common example is, let's say I purchase fiber cable. Maybe I purchase it by the feet, but I sell it by the meter. SAP can automatically calculate those unit of measure conversions from imperial system to metric system for you, and it can automatically calculate the prices as well. It also does the barcoding. So it does this pricing. It also does special pricing. So if you have discounts, you can, like special prices and discounts by unit of measure, the system lets you do that as well. So I could have maybe a quantity break or a volume discount. If they buy 100 12 packs, they get a certain price. If they buy 100 24 packs, they get an even better price. So we can also create volume discounts based on unit of measure. And like I said earlier, now we just need to create a single item code versus having to manage many item codes. So, oops, wrong title there. So that should say, how can unit of measure groups help you? Well, like I said, less items to manage, we can reduce the database size, and it's easier to purchase and sell. And let's get right into the unit of measure groups demo. So there's a little bit of prerequisites involved. So I'm going to go right into SAP Business One. So the first thing we need to do is go under administration. So there's a couple of things we need to turn on. So like I said, after you upgrade to the 9.0 family and higher, you're going to have some new fields and a couple of checkboxes to turn on. So we're going to go into system initialization, into general settings, and under the inventory tab, you're going to notice two boxes here. One's called auto add all unit measure group definitions to new and existing items. And the second one is auto add all package definitions to new and existing items. So we're simply going to check those two boxes. And after we check those boxes, it's going to help turn on a couple of features, going to create some fields in SAP Business One. And what we want to do is make sure that we are familiar and display those fields. So one of the first things we're going to do in our documents, for example, let's go into a sales order. Let's go to the last one, for example. So there is a new field called unit of measure code. You know, previously we had the unit of measure name, that's always been there, but now we have this unit of measure code that allows us to toggle between the different selections. So for example, you can see on the screen here, there's something called the 24 pack, but I can go into this field and pick various types of packs, whether it's a 6-pack, a 24-pack, a 36-pack, and it'll automatically pull in the relevant price pertaining to that pack size. So make sure you turn on this field. So we go to form settings and click the unit of measure code and make sure it's active so that you can put your cursor in there and make selections. Okay. Something else you might notice is that when you turn on unit of measures under administration and setup, under inventory, you're going to have two more submodules called unit of measure and unit of measure groups. I want to click on unit item groups first of all and just show you a new field in there. So for example, there's a field here called default unit of measure group. So I might have a group called each and packs. Oops. Find mode. Each. Okay, so I have this item group called each. I just added it, and you can see the default unit of measure group. So if I go into that field, I can select the different unit of measure groups that I've created. So what happens is anytime I assign an item to this particular item group, I can assign a default unit of measure group. Let me go into a better example here. Let's say food and beverages, right? So food and beverages, so whenever I sell, like for example, my example with cans of Coke, for example, 6 packs, 12 packs, 36 packs, I can set up a default unit of measure group. So whenever I create a new item, it'll default to this unit of measure group. So if I were to go into the item master data, I want to show you some new fields, right? So let's just say, for example, A0015. We're going to pull up an item called soda pop, and this soda pop belongs to the food and beverage item group. And now you'll notice there's a new field called unit of measure group right here. And it's defaulting to the each and packs unit of measure group that we just created. And when we turn this on, you can see that we also have the ability to assign barcodes to different unit of measures as well as prices. Let's just quickly open that. So for example, for a 12 pack, there's a specific barcode. For a 24 pack, there's a different barcode. For a 6 pack, there's another barcode, and for each, it's got its own barcode. Same thing with pricing. So for example, if I were to look at the MSRP price list, I can see, if I click on this little button here, I can see that there's different prices pertaining to this price list MSRP for different types of packs. So in each would be $1. I can sell a can of Coke for $1, a 6-pack for $6, a 12-pack for $12, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, you can also create a discount. So for example, maybe if I sell a 6-pack, it gets progressively cheaper. Maybe there's a 2% discount, right? So it's $5.88, et cetera, et cetera. We'll just keep it at $6 for now. All right. Another thing you're going to notice in the item master data now is within the purchasing, sales, and inventory tabs, you now have this button as well. So it allows you to select the different types of purchasing unit of measure codes. So when I buy this from my vendor, right, I can define what my default purchasing unit of measures are. So in this case, it's a 24-pack, and you can also put in the respective dimensions. So for this specific 24-pack, for these soda pops, a 12-pack, the dimension is 18 inches, the width is 12 inches, the height is 5 inches, and the weight, for example, is 22 pounds. And I can define that for each pack, as you can see here. Similarly, on the sales side, I can do the same thing. Now, remember, there might be instances where I purchase a 24-pack from my vendor, but maybe I sell a different unit of measure to my customers. Maybe I do sell them a 24-pack, but I could also sell them 12 packs, 6 packs, and eaches as well. And these are the respective dimensions on the sales side. You can also inventory different unit of measures. So although I'm purchasing by 24 packs, I'm actually inventorying by eaches, because sometimes I can break up a pack and sell them individually, right? So I want to know exactly how many cans I have in stock. So that's why you'll see here, I've defined my unit of measure code as an each, because I want to know exactly how many cans I have in stock. Okay. You're also going to notice a couple of other fields as well that are exposed. Some unit of measure fields that are exposed in other modules now. So for example, under pricing, you can do special pricing by unit measures, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. I'll show you those fields a little bit later on. But let's go back to administration, and let's look at how we would actually define our unit of measure groups and unit of measures. So under administration, setup, inventory, we're going to go down to the unit of measures section. Okay. So this is simply where you define your unit of measure codes and names, such as each, 6-pack, or in some cases, meters and feet. And we're going to create something new here. We're going to create something called a 36-pack, right? 36-pack. Give it the same name as the code. Okay. So we have to tell the system what these names are, because we're going to use these names later on within our groups. So now that we've defined that, we're going to go into a unit of measure groups. And you can see I've got different groups here. You can see the manual one is the default one. The length, I created one for length because my early example where I buy and sell hoses in different unit measures, like feet versus buying feet, selling meters, for example. You can see here, I'll open it. I've defined, the different conversions from, centimeters to meters, and even from, so my base unit measure, for example, is 1 inch. Well, I've converted that into centimeters using this base quantity. So I'm telling the system what the conversions are, right? And it's going to allow me to do the math later on. So we have to tell the system what these conversions are. It's a one-time setup. Another one here is, another group I've created here is called each and packs. So if I double click on here, now again, you can double click or you can highlight the row and then click on this button here called Group Definition. It's going to take you to the same place. So this is where you define the base unit of measures, right? You set up the names of your unit of measure groups that are eventually assigned to items, and this is where we define the math for the conversions. For example, I might have a group called packs, like 6-packs, 12-pack, and 24-pack. But I do the math and I tell the system a 6-pack is equal to 6 eaches, right? My base unit of measure is this field right here. This is 1 each. A 12-pack is equivalent to 12 eaches. A 24-pack is equivalent to 24 eaches, right? So now we're going to create one called a 36-pack. And that's equivalent to 36 eaches, right? So now we've updated that. So if we go back into our item master, let's, for example, go back to our same item code called can of Coke or whatever it was, A00015. Okay, for soda pop. And I go in here and I click on this button here. I'll now see that this 36-pack is available. I can set it as my default, but I can also set up the respective dimensions for this 36-pack, right? The respective length, width, height, volume, and weight, right? Same thing on the sales side. If I click here, I now see that 36-pack is available. I can also set it as a default, and I can set up the respective length, width, et cetera, the different unit of measures. I can also define how I pack these cases or packs of soda. So for example, I have something called a package type called pallet. So for example, if you look at our 24-pack, you can see on a pallet, I can fit 100 24-packs on there, and you can see the different dimensions relating to the pallet. Okay, so now that we've defined our different unit of measures, okay, let's see it in action, right? So let's say, for example, let's purchase something. I'm going to create a purchase order. You can see here I've already displayed this unit of measure code. I am going to pick my vendor, Soda Pop Inc. and A00015, right? You can see it's defaulting to a 24-pack, right? I want to buy maybe 100 24-packs, right? And it's pulling in the respective price, right? In this case, $12 for a 24-pack. Here's the extended amount, and here's the weight calculation, right? I'm going to pull in, maybe bring in another one as well. So I have other flavors as well. I'm going to bring in these 2 flavors as well, the ginger ale flavor and the root beer flavor. I'm also going to purchase 100 24-packs. Now, remember what I said about making sure that this field is active. So I can delete that 24-pack, click on Tab on my keyboard, and I can see all the different unit of measures to choose from, as opposed to having to put in a brand new item code, create a brand new item code and then select that item code on the row. I can use the same item code and then pick a different type of pack. So maybe I want to buy a 12-pack. So I buy a 12-pack for this particular item, right? And you can see it pulls in the respective purchase price for that 12-pack. Again, where is that respective price coming from? If I drill in to A0017. I look at the price here. I'm going to go, in this case, I'm going to look at my vendor's price list, Soda Pop Inc., right? We know that a single can is 50 cents each. If I click on here, I can define the different prices. So a 6-pack would be $3, a 12-pack would be $6, a 24-pack would be $12, as opposed to having to create separate prices for separate items on my price list, right? I can do it all within the same single item master record on the item master data. So let's go ahead with this. Let's go ahead and add that. Oh, I have a mandatory field here. I'm just going to put in the vendor reference number here. And I'm going to add that. And again, I can receive that, copy that to my goods receipt PO, and physically receive that into stock, right? We'll just go ahead and do that. On the flip side, on the sales side, let's create a sales order. So I'm going to select my customer. Maybe it's this guy here, Vega Bodega. And I'm going to select those 3 items. So if I go to food and beverage, I'm going to select all 3 of these items that I just received into stock. You can also see in real time that I've physically got 2,400 of this item in the warehouse, 2,400 of this item in the warehouse, and 1,200 because remember I brought 112 packs for this particular item. Similarly, I can change the quantities, right? Maybe I only want to sell some eaches, right? So I can sell an each. Same thing here. Oops, let's get rid of that. Each. Right? And then it's going to automatically convert the prices for me. So you can see the 12-pack, which was $12. I'm selling it as a single can now, so it's $1 for that 1 can. And again, just so you can see it in action, again, let's look at the last row here. If I change the each, look at the price here. If I want to sell a 6-pack, it's going to be $6, right? So we'll put our delivery date in there, customer PO number, and then we'll add that into the system. What I've done was I've created a line loop here, a second pair of eyes, right? So this is a little tip and trick. If anyone's using B1UP, which is a product extensibility tool of SAP Business One, I've created a rule here that sends out a pop-up message to warn my user creating this order. It says, hey, check your unit measure on row 3, right? You have selected a unit of measure other than each or manual. Click yes to proceed or click no to change, right? So just sometimes, you know, we're human, we can't always be perfect, so we make mistakes. Sometimes we pick the wrong pack size, or we're picking something other than the default unit of measure, which is usually each, or if you're not using advanced unit measures, you're using the manual, the old manual unit of measure code. So you can see here, if this is equal to something to other than each, row 3 is something other than the default. So in this case, it says it's a 6-pack. The system's going to check, and it's going to warn me. It says, it even tells me the offending row, row 3. You have selected a unit measure other than each. So I can click on no, and that will force me to change it, right? And if I click on add again, it's going to allow me to process that sales order. It's just a second pair of eyes, right? It's just a warning to keep your sales reps honest and make sure that they haven't made any mistakes. So it's a little tool you can use. Oh, one thing I forgot to also show you is that you can also show the respective barcode field here in case you're scanning items in as opposed to typing the item codes in the system like I was. You can scan the item code. So there's a respective item code for an each, or sorry, a respective barcode for an each, a respective barcode for a 12-pack, et cetera, et cetera. So you can scan that in and it'll pick up the respective unit of measure code for that item. Okay, so if we drill into one of these items, for example, remember how we said we're going to inventory by the each? Well, I know in stock we have 2,400, but I just sold one can. So I've committed one can to our customer, Vega Bodega, and now I have $23.99 available, right? And that's because I am using a different unit of measure to purchase, sell, and inventory. I want to track by the eaches at the lowest common denominator, right? One of the other things that's new is under special pricing, right? So let's take a look at inventory and special prices for business partners. So I'm going to select a customer called Vega Bodega. Let's select another item code. Let's select the ginger ale flavor. And what's new under special prices for business partners is that you can now set special prices or discounts by the unit of measure group code. So I'm going to double click on ginger ale, and I want to say if they purchase a certain quantity, right? So now you see the unit of measure code each. Well, I'm going to say if they purchase 100 24 packs, then they're going to get a 10% discount, right? So instead of the regular $24 for a 24 pack, now it's only going to be $21.60 for a 24 pack. So which is kind of cool because now SAP recognizes and respects the unit of measure codes for special prices. So I'm going to update that. And I'm going to go back into my sales order. I'm going to select my customer, Vega Bodega, and I'm going to select my ginger ale item code. And if I change this from 1 to 100, take a look at the unit price and the color. So you can see now I got a 10% discount, and the unit prices turn blue, and the price after discount is $21.60. So here's a tip. Whenever you see a blue font in the discount field or in the price field, that means that there is a special price defined in the system. Okay, so we can do special pricing by unit of measure groups, which is kind of cool as well. All right, we can also do, I'll just cancel out of there. Under the price update wizard, now this price update wizard, I think was released in 9.1, or maybe it was 9.2, version 9.2. You can do price updates en masse, right? But it also allows you to do price updates based on a unit of measure group, right? So we can do item prices, and we can do we can do unit of measure reduced by a certain percentage. So it says add or subtract, but really one way to interpret that is increase. So we want to increase the price. So for example, let's say we do a 10%. And what I recommend is we do a simulation. The cool thing about the price update wizard is it allows you to do simulations where you don't actually update the entire price list. Prior to this, normally you would have to do a system backup, do a price update, and hopefully everything went well. But if it didn't, then you would have to restore a backup. Now you can just run a simulation to see what happens, right? So if I want to run it for a specific item code, let's say this one here, the root beer flavor. Okay. We're going to do it by, say, MSRP. And maybe just for the, maybe the 6-pack. Okay. And then we say next. It's going to run a simulation, right? So you can see here for this particular item code, for this particular item group and unit of measure, the 6-pack, we did a 10% price update. We reduced it by 10%. So 10 times 6 is 60 cents. So the suggested price is $5.40, right? So kind of cool. You can also do price updates by unit of measure codes as well. So that's a nice addition. Okay, so another scenario, common scenario is we purchase using the imperial method or maybe the metric system, and then we sell using a different system, right? So let's take a look at where we purchase some hoses. I think I have one in already predefined here. Here we go. So here's a hose, right? You can see here, or some fiber cable. We purchased 1,000 meters at $1.25 for a total of $12.50. So again, if we drill into this item code, we look at the purchasing data tab. The default purchasing unit of measure code is by the meter, okay? But maybe we inventory and sell it by a different unit of measure code. So let's go ahead. So we know we have some in stock, right? We've got 2,851 meters of fiber cable in stock. But a particular customer only buys it in feet. So we're going to go back here to our sales order, and we're going to select our customer. Let's say DWH. And we're going to select our hose. Where was it? Oh, I know. A000. Our fiber cable, sorry. So here, and remember, under the unit of measure code field, I can delete the default unit of measure code, which is meters, and I can select maybe feet, right? And what it does is it automatically changes the price to the price per foot. And maybe I want to buy, 500 feet of this cable, right? So again, I can purchase in metric and I can sell in imperial, and the system will automatically convert. It'll do the math for me. It'll convert the prices for me, right? So I can go ahead and add that into the system. Oh, got to put in my delivery date. Maybe I'll put in a customer PO number, and I'll just add that into the system. Okay, so that's just another example of doing unit of measure conversions for you from, imperial to metric. One thing I forgot to show is how we would pack something, that new packing feature. So let's take that sales order we did for the cans of Cokes or the colas, and let's do a delivery, right? Let's see if we got one here. Actually, let's change these. Let's see if we got one here. Let's do, let's convert these to 24 packs, just so we have a bigger pack and that we can fill a pallet. Because you can't really fill a pallet with just one can of Coke. So let's use some 24 packs here. Make it a little bit more realistic. And let's say 100 of each, right? Okay, so we're going to update this sales order. And now we're going to copy this to a delivery note. So what I want to show in the delivery note is the new packing slip. So on the packing slip, we can define, different packaging sizes like pallets, right? So you can see here, if I right click and I say packing slip, right? So on the first package, I want it under type. Sorry, you may have missed it. Under the type field, I just tab my button and I want to select a pallet, right? Remember, I defined a packaging type called pallet. Do this by the pound. And we're going to say, well, on this pallet, which items here are going to go on that one pallet, or at least on the first pallet, right? You have the option here. You could say, well, the full 100 is going to go on this pallet, or you can say 50 24 packs are going to go on this pallet, right? But we'll just say the full 100 are going to go of this item, the cola flavor. All 124 packs are going to go on this single pallet. So we say highlight it and we transfer it to the right side and we say update. You could theoretically maybe fit another 124 packs on that same pallet, or you could add a row and create a second pallet. So for example, I will right click, I will add a row, and I'm going to create a second pallet, and I'm going to highlight this item here. And I'm going to say, all 100 are going on that pallet as well. Update. Now, if I wanted to, I can even go here and add a row again. Now on my third pallet, I can say one pallet, and I'm going to split the shipment, for example. So instead of putting all 100 on this third pallet, maybe I'll put 75 units or 75 24 packs on that third pallet, right? And you can even create a fourth row if you wanted, and put the remainder on a fourth pallet, however you want, right? So again, fourth row, pallet type, doing it by the pound, and again, you could put all 25 on that fourth pallet. Okay, so now I was able to pack my different 124 packs on different pallets. So that's part of the new feature as well. So when I add this, oh, I have negative inventory. That's okay. So when I add that, basically, if I had enough stock, it would go ahead and go through. But let me just delete this row here. I know why. I don't have enough of that last one here, so I'll just add these two. Oh, that's okay. Different unit of measure. I don't have enough stock as well. So the point is I can create a packing slip based on these different pack sizes. Maybe I can fix that offline and try it one more shot. Nah, it's not working. That's okay. So again, you get the idea. You can divide your different pack sizes into different pallets here. Okay. So let's go back to our PowerPoint here. We're just going to do a quick summary and wrap things up. So key points to take home. You must upgrade to the 9.0 family. So the current version is 9.3. Version 10 is coming out. I think it's to be released by the end of the year in general release. There is some minor setup involved, a couple of checkboxes to check, some form settings, some fields to expose on your documents. Remember, it's less items to manage, so you are decreasing the number of item codes that you have to maintain in your database, and that ultimately leads to a reduced database size. The system's doing the math for you, so it's automatically converting the unit of measures for you. And it makes it easier to purchase and sell. Just simply toggling between the different unit of measure codes on the screen, as opposed to having to select different item codes and having long or large sales orders with lots of rows, okay? So that kind of concludes today's session on advanced units measure groups. I'd like to open up the floor for any questions. Lisa, maybe you can unmute everyone.
You bet. Okay, I've unmuted everyone. If anyone has any questions. It doesn't look like there's any in the chat or in the questions at this point anyway.
Okay. Well, I mean, my contact information is right here, so feel free to send me an email or give me a shout if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer them.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jerwin, for another great presentation, and thank you to everyone for attending today. You'll receive a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to the recording on our website. Feel free to share with anyone on your team that you think might benefit. When the session ends, you'll see a short survey display in your browser window. If you could take a minute to fill that in and let us know how we did and what you'd like to see in future webinars, we really appreciate the feedback. Thanks again for attending, and we hope to see you at next month's webinar. Thanks, Jerwin. Thanks, everyone.